Good evening, everyone. It's 7 o'clock in Gardner, so Gardner City Council will come to order. Look, I don't even have to invite everybody to stand and join us in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, good evening, everyone. We'll get started with this evening's meeting with public comments. At this time, members of the public are welcome to come forward and make comments about city matters or items on the agenda that are not part of a public hearing. If you wish to make a public comment, please step up to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and be heard.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. My name is Rich Melton. I'm at 521 East Hawthorne, right here in Gardner. I have a couple things tonight. First and foremost, I'd still like to ask Councilman Fodovich what his status is with his children and where they're going to school and when he plans on resigning his seat on the council since he effectively has moved. I wondered if anybody else on council has asked the councilman status of his children or any of those questions, since no one else seems to know that. Secondly, I'd like to congratulate those folks who stood up to cut money out of the budget. I think that was a fantastic thing. I think it has to be done again. But I will tell you that starting after this budget gets passed, next year council needs to right away look at some things that I think are going to be a big issue for the city, and that is that the police department, I think, has 2 new vehicles that they're going to get this year, which will quickly roll right over 100,000 miles, like every other vehicle they currently have, or is almost there right now. To me, it's not a big deal. I do a pretty good job of protecting my own house. I mean, heck, we even put white chalk by the door to save the officers a little time if somebody tries to break in. So, but there's a lot of people in this town, and several council members included, who would rely heavily on the police making sure that they got there in a timely fashion. Vehicles that are over 100,000 miles and driven every day, pretty much most of them don't shut off for any extended period of time. I feel that that is a problem in a town the size of Gardner. And being that I was in the original Citizens Academy, I can tell you that those cars, and especially the ones that are still running, that are the Dodges, no matter what agency I talk to, I have friends in several, those cars have all had a problem. So relying on them is not going to get it done for them to go over 100,000 miles and survive. So those are the things I'd like council to think about for the next coming year. So have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Rich. With no one else coming forward, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Is there a council member that would like to remove an item from the consent agenda? I would entertain a motion.
I move we approve the consent agenda.
Second. Motion Harrison, second Freeman, that we approve the consent agenda. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed? Consent agenda is approved. New business item number 1. Consider approving an ordinance adopting the fiscal year 2015 budget. Jeannie, do we have an ordinance number?
2452.
Laura Gorley, good evening.
Good evening. So, here we are. Per the governing body's direction, following the August 11th work session, staff prepared the 2015 budget for the governing body's approval. And there is one item that has changed in the 2014 revised budget. We had 2 council members inquire about the truck scales. So, right now, they're in 2014. We await your direction on whether they stay in or they come out. That does not impact 2015 for tonight, but it does impact your 2014 revised. Also, as a follow-up to this budget process, staff will come back to you this fall with a 2016 budget calendar and an update for next year's process. So, that's all I have to say.
Very good. Well, we're looking forward to that. At this time, we'll open up the floor for public comments regarding new business item number 1. With no one coming forward, council questions for Laura regarding ordinance number 2452.
I just want to make sure I'm clear, Laura. With the truck scales, by passing the ordinance today, then we are approving to have that budget left in the 2014.
Yes.
Do
Or,
we get a separate item for those at the time of purchase, or is that, or is this, does this just take care of it? Because they were about $30,000.
it's a budget estimate put back in the budget.
Okay, so.
So,
It'll come-
it'll come back
Well,
with the
it'll come
ministerial's
through.
authority.
All right.
Okay.
I really had more of a comment to make, and I wanted to say that the budget process, it had its bumpy road this time around, and I do believe that at the end of the day, this was a good exercise from the standpoint of looking at needs versus wants, and we can always recalibrate certain priorities within the framework of this budget. It's not completely set in stone, and I do want to thank the finance staff for their hard work in this process. I know that it was a little bit extra work that you guys were required, we requested you to do, and I do want to say I appreciate all the hard work you guys put in. So
Appreciate that, and I'll pass it on to staff.
yes, thank you. And with that, I'll pass.
Other questions? Comments? Would entertain a motion?
I move that we approve ordinance number 2451, adopting the fiscal... 2452, I'm sorry about that.
Sure.
Ordinance number 2452, adopting the fiscal year 2015 budget.
Second.
Motion Shoot, second Roberts, that we approve ordinance number 2452, adopting the fiscal year 2015 budget as proposed. Podovich.
No.
Freeman.
Yes.
Roberts.
Yes.
Shoot.
Yes.
Harrison.
No.
Ordinance number 2452 passes.
I did, per your direction, bring it for signature. So,
All right. New business item number 2. Consider passing an ordinance amending Title 13 Utilities, Chapters 13.15.010 and 13.40.010 to increase water and wastewater rates. Laura?
as we've discussed during the summer's budget presentations, 2015 budget for the water fund, including funds to purchase rural water 7 service area and the critical replacement of the Hillsdale water plant filter media. It also included funding for, the wastewater fund also included funding for costs that were ineligible to be included in the KDHE loan. And both the water and the wastewater funds had funding to reinstate your infrastructure maintenance programs. As we've discussed before, transfers from the operating funds go to those development funds to pay for the lack of growth-related funding that's needed to pay for your debt. So with all that being said, as we've discussed, water rates increased by 8% and the wastewater rates increased by 4%, and that was as presented in the budget that you just discussed.
Okay. With that being the case, we'll open up the floor for public comments regarding new business item number 2. Is anyone in attendance? With no one coming forward, questions for Laura?
I really don't have a question per se, but I think one thing that, I don't think I'm alone in discussing is when we start planning for 2016 and looking at the rates, understand we'll have a new utility director in place. I think it's important that we look to see what impact the reserves that are within that fund can make on the ratepayers. And if there's an opportunity to make sure that those are used in a way that can lessen the increases, whether it's on the water and wastewater or on the electric side of things, that we uncover any opportunity to do so.
Okay.
You know, and that's obviously a thorough study. I know they've done some rate studies, but I don't know if they've been able to put an analysis in that would say, what if we actually use X percentage of our reserves, and what impact that would make. So I think it's important that we look at that, and that gives us ample time to kind of plan for, and one of the things the new utility director should expect to have as an action item for them as they start the process.
Okay, we'll do that.
Okay. Anyone else?
Yeah, I actually had one thing to say real quick
Okay.
about the water and wastewater, because we didn't have a ton of discussion about this during the budget. I think that a consolidation of those funds under a utility has got to be done. We understand we have infrastructure maintenance needs that need to be taken care of, but I think that we need to do whatever we can to try to minimize the impact of these increases.
For clarity, are you referring to removing the development funds?
Yes, well, not just removing the development funds, but also, and why are you
That's,
shaking your head?
well, are you,
Commingling.
we were able
utility
to
funds.
commingle the utility funds. You're talking about what Councilman Fodovich brought up in terms of development or utility?
Well, that development has to be consolidated.
Development we can do because that's a council decision, but the utility fund is a different issue in terms of being able to consolidate those funds.
Commingle.
Well, we-
By statute, I believe.
Well, we can facilitate funds transfers.
Yes.
How much money is that, did we decide, if we get rid of that 12%?
Or which set of funds? Development?
Well, I mean, whichever one.
The ones that
we're-
you brought up, the development funds?
Right.
We can look at consolidating those funds. You don't have to have all those development reserve funds.
And what would that free up, money-wise?
How much?
I'd have to look.